Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bacon and Coffee. I have a great guest today. Her name is Ellen Huxtable, and she is with Advantage Business Concepts. Today, we're going to be talking about networking, but before we get started, let me do our 30-second countdown. And now we'll get started with our digital caffeine and bacon. Oops. And here we go. Welcome, everybody, and I would love to say hello to Ellen Huxtable, who's joining us today from beautiful Batavia, Illinois. Ellen, how are you doing?
I am doing just fine. How are you doing, Brian?
I am fabulous. And so today we're going to be talking about networking. So we started networking, what, you said about 15 years ago, right? Your son Nathan was, what, 10 at the time?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so tell us about how you got into networking, because you've started all these different groups and things.
Oh, well, I was working for a company. There was a small boutique company, and we were doing physician practice management. But we were a small company, and so it was pretty much you ate what you killed. And so I started doing some small business networking, and I found out that I really liked it. I liked it more than doing the physician practice consulting. Because in small business, we have much more control over a lot of things than doctors sometimes have. And one thing led to another. Excuse me, I went to a number of groups. And about the time that we met, I started a group at the Congregational Church that at the time was a little bit different because we weren't industry exclusive, and we aren't now. And we figured that we're going to be very low key. If you can come, that's fine. If you can't come because you've got something better to do, like make money, that's even better. And so if you didn't come, we were very happy for you. And we've been doing that for about the last 15 years. And so it's been fun.
It has been fun. And then from there, it kind of branched off. I remember meeting at a coffee shop in Batavia. I think it was Limestone at the time. It was something before Limestone, right? It turned into Limestone afterwards. What was it called before?
You know, I think it was Limestone, but at a different location. They moved.
Right. So it was Limestone originally. So yeah, and they've moved since. Now it's where Gaetano's is. And but Gaetano's isn't there either. So there's been a lot of change. So we've outlived a lot of businesses that have opened and closed and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah. I mean, how could we possibly do that considering we're only like 15 or 20 years old, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I just had my 15th birthday the other day and it was amazing. It was like super cool, dude. And
I know. We met when we were 5 years old. What can you say?
Right. So then you started these like micro mastermind groups, and we had a business consultant in there. We had somebody who did welcome home services. We had somebody who ran a jewelry store. We had a whole bunch of different people. So what got you started into the masterminding side?
Well, one of the things that I very much believe is that nobody has all the answers to all the questions. And one of the things that's a great advantage nowadays is that because of the way the economy is, people tend to have a backstory. So people have something they did before what they're doing now. And I wanted to take advantage of that. So the mastermind groups bring together people who are non-competing, and everybody gets a chance to ask everybody else or tell everybody else, here's my problem, here's my opportunity. What do you think I should do about it? And the one that's especially powerful now is one that has people that have 10 plus employees, because they're knee deep in their work, they're knee deep in their businesses, and they want to grow. So those people are incredibly dynamic. They're lots of fun, and they wanted to meet twice a month, not just once, because they're so engaged in what we're doing. So that's especially fun.
Yeah, no, that is a lot of fun. And then we have a couple of other mastermind groups that we're doing as well. We have one that is industry exclusive that's more in the B2B side. And you've got a bunch of them. I mean, you've got ones that are local, you've got ones that are national. I mean, that's one of the things that really changed networking, I think, for everybody was the pandemic and the fact that, we all became zombies. We had to learn how to do this in a different way, which, in one way, shape, or form kind of squelched some people from doing it, but then it enhanced some other people. Some other people really learned how to maximize their relationships online through Zoom, where others are so much more, acclimated to getting together in person that they tended to fall off, right?
Absolutely. I have one group which is fun. It's a group of young entrepreneurs, and one person is in Florida, one person's in Washington, D.C., one person's in Canada, and the other person's in California. And of course, being younger entrepreneurs, they don't see anything at all unusual with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's fun is that it's a positive and a negative. And the positive is you get to meet, as you said, people that you'd never get to meet before and bring people together. And the negative for some people is if they see everybody else as being competition, there's more competition because so many of us, especially in fields like yours and mine, can do our work largely through Zoom. So some people see it as being a negative, but I think very much that the positives highly outweigh the negatives. We can do 5 meetings a day if we wanted to and get a little zoomed out.
Yeah, I did 8 last week. It one day, and it was a lot. But that I learned a long time ago. I've kind of been doing the online stuff for a long time, and part of it was that I was paying probably $1,200 a year, $100 a month. Zoom is now, if you pay for it, it's like $15 a month. So it's way cheaper. But back then, even at $100 a month, if it saved me 1 hour of time of driving to a meeting with somebody, then GoToMeeting was fine. You could do these one-on-one meetings and it would save me an hour of time. The time in the car and the lack of productivity was well worth the $1,200 a year. But Zoom kind of changed the game. There was a point last year, it was like 20 million people signed up for Zoom in March. It was, just amazing as how many people got into it. So people started to learn some of the ins and outs of networking that never did it before,
Mm-hmm.
And so you being old hat, me being old hat at this, I mean, my first book, it's not about you, it's about bacon, was written about networking. And that was in face-to-face. That was before everybody started doing the Zoom thing. So what did you find in the last year that, really kind of made you sit back and go, about networking online versus networking in person? What were some of the differences that you found?
In some ways, I think it's actually more immediate than being in person. Certainly there's the efficiency of it, but also, especially during the pandemic, at the height of it, when we would have had to wear masks and stay 6 feet apart, on Zoom, we can see each other unmasked, and it's a closer picture. We don't have to look like we're 6 feet apart. So those are some of the things that were really benefits of working with Zoom. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to laugh because I was one of the millions of people that got Zoom in March of last year. And on my calendar for this year, in March, there was a calendar page that was dutifully marked, cancel Zoom. Because at the time, we thought it was going to be a 2-week gig. And so I didn't want to pay for another year of Zoom and have it auto-renew. And so my calendar was marked, cancel Zoom. Ha, right.
Right. Yeah. And that's funny because I talk, it's funny you brought up a couple of different podcasts and blogs that I talked about. One was cancel culture, which, obviously is something very different, but the cancel culture was go through all of the things that you purchased over the last handful of years, the subscriptions that you've had, and, cancel the ones that you're not using. So obviously you're not going to cancel that. And then the other one was an interview that I did with somebody out of North Carolina. And she talked a lot about how to read body language when somebody had a mask on, how to read their face, how to read their eyes, their posture, those kind of things. And, whether they had a mask or not and how important that was. So I think that's one of the things that we had to learn was how to overcome some of those things. And even today, there's still some situations where you do have to do that. I mean, if you go to stores, masks are going to be around for a while. they might be around forever. I mean, it may be that we wear masks to avoid the flu, come winter, because think about it. How many cases of the flu were there? Oh, not zero, but there were very, very few of them, comparatively speaking, because people were isolated and home and wearing masks. So, I mean, that's something that I think is going to be part of our culture for a long time to come. I mean, it is in Southeast Asia. I mean, they wear masks all the time, so it's really part of their culture. And I think that's something that's going to become more of our culture, don't you think?
Yeah, I do, because I think there are going to be some people, and sometimes I'm one of them,
Mm-hmm.
that think that it's not a big inconvenience for the protection, or at least the peace of mind it gives you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just as soon spend a little bit of time with a mask. And again, like just like with the Zoom, I made a couple of masks for those in my family. I figured, sure, we'll use them for 2 weeks. Ha. And yeah, and so those are still around, and I'm glad I made them sturdy because they've lasted the year, and we've got some disposable ones too. But I think that the pandemic has changed. It's changed what we value. It's changed
Mm-hmm.
what we appreciate, and it's changed the way that we do business. I think that our value systems have changed because of the pandemic,
And
and that's good.
I agree with you 110%. I think one of the things that the basics of networking are this is, you walk into a room full of people. Some of them some of them you don't know. And how you approach networking is, a lot about how you do your business. So I think that Zoom has made it a little different, because one of the things that I found is if you walked into a networking event like I did the other day and somebody hands me a business card, this business card is from somebody who's a real estate attorney. And so what happens is I would always scan those cards and I would put them into my CRM in one way, shape, or form, but I wouldn't immediately add them to any kind of spam or anything like that. What happens now is that people in Zoom meetings are putting their contact info in, and immediately you're getting added to email lists that you didn't even know that you wanted. And so I think it's kind of really changed the scope of how people are looking at it as like, hey, they gave me the email. That must be permission to, get on a list and communicate with them, even though they don't know, like, and trust me and wouldn't want to buy from me. But they sure might, they're breathing and they have a wallet. They've got to be a good customer, right?
That's fun, because back in the day, people would collect a whole stack of business cards at a meeting and assume the same thing.
Right.
Assume that everybody there wanted to be on their email list. And one of the things I have is I have a book on networking, power networking for small businesses, and that's on Amazon. And it talks about the dance of networking, because it is a dance. And part of that dance is to appreciate and to be respectful of the other person. And that means you ask before you put somebody on your list. And I tell people, I don't want to be a spammer, and I know your email is full. So I think I've gotten much more traction that way than by just adding them to my email list without asking.
And the key thing about it is if people want to be on your list, they can subscribe. If they don't want to be on your list, they can unsubscribe. And I always think that, if you do decide to do an email, I always suggest that when you're networking with somebody is that you take this card and then you send them a personalized email from your regular list and say, hey, it was nice meeting you, yada, yada, yada. Connect with me on LinkedIn, do anything like that. And if you want, I have an email list and here's a button to subscribe to it. So if you give them the option to do it, it becomes much more personalized, and they get what they want. They can subscribe and unsubscribe based on what it is that they're doing, right?
Absolutely. One of the things that's one of the tricks I do when I get business cards, and I've talked to somebody for a while, and I think there might be some synergies between what they do and what I do. And I'll ask them if they want to be added to my list. And if they say yes, I'll take the business card and I'll fold down the corner. And so I'll come home with a handful of 15 business cards, and 3 of them or 4 of them are folded down. Those people I add, the other ones I don't. And that's the way I immediately know which people I've talked to and gotten permission to add to my list. And it's very, very quick, very efficient. And it immediately tells me which people have given permission.
I love that old school technique. I
I
mean, that's so
know.
awesome.
I'm so old school.
Well, but old school is important because I mean, when you sit down and look at it, old school technology still works in Zoom. You should really think about that. Just because you're in a room with 100 people doesn't mean all 100 of those people want to network with you. They're there with their own agenda, with their own purposes, and just because you have them, they haven't built up the know, like, trust. And that's something that takes time. And so if somebody comes to you and says, yes, fold down the business card and add me to the list, that's very different than somebody just handing you a business card and adding it in. And whether you do that on Zoom, you grab that information out of the chat and then import them into your list is the same thing as not asking them permission. So that's one of the reasons I think that, having a conversation with someone is still the utmost important. Now, one of the things that we're in, some of our networking groups, one of the things that they say is, they want you to give leads, and obviously they only want quality leads. And so, part of networking is really trying to have that servant mentality. I mean, Al Ritter wrote that book. It's the 100-0 principle, which is give 100% of yourself 100% of the time, expect nothing in return, and watch what happens. And one of the benefits is if you walk into a room saying, okay, let me collect all the business cards and let me hit these people up. Yeah, the chances, what you're basically doing is spamming them, and you're going to turn them off faster. You'll turn off the vast majority of people, right?
Absolutely.
That's equivalent to what a lot of people teach in LinkedIn is go get 30,000 people and put them on your list and then spam them all. And we talked about the llamas. That was been our thing. It's like, say you got a llama to sell, you get 30,000 people and you spam them all and say, I have a llama. And 3,000 people will open up the email or the message, and then maybe 300 people will actually say, well, tell me about the llama. And out of that, 30 people might buy, and then three people might buy a second llama, or maybe buy llama accessories. Some of the pictures that you sent were, ones with great llama hats and, llama coats and all those kind of fun things. So you never know when somebody needs something extra for their llama. But that same kind of thing is what you're doing in the process is you have 3 repeat customers out of 30,000, but you've ticked off 29,000 people who will never do business with you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we all know people who we've just met once, and they're out there and they say, will you connect with me on LinkedIn? And so I will, and if it's somebody that I've seen, I'll say, sure. And the part that's so discouraging is after that reasonable and polite introduction, the next thing I get is a very long LinkedIn message about this great product or service that they have and how they've seen my website or whatever, and they say, you really can use my service. No, shall we get together Monday or Tuesday?
Right.
And I don't even bother answering them. I just knock them out because they're not going to give up, and I'm not going to be a customer for what they have to offer. If I wanted to be their customer, I would find them. It's a matter of me buying as opposed to them selling, and there's a big difference there.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. And then the other tool that we talk about networking and giving leads and collecting cards is the one-on-one, which is one of the biggest tools in networking that I think people utilize, but they don't get it right. The one-on-one is, let me go in and tell you about my business, right? It's like, okay, I am here to educate you as to what I do and why you need it or why people in your network need it, as opposed to a really good one-on-one is going in and listening to somebody and then saying, hey, I think there's a good connection that I have in my network for you. That's back to Al Ritter's concept of, if you give something first and don't expect anything in return, a lot of good stuff can come of that. They may connect you with somebody else, or they may keep you top of mind because you did something for them. I have a real life example of that. And that was, we were in our networking group, and Mark James said to me, he says, hey, Brian, I've got a person who is looking for bands. And I said, awesome. I'm not in a band anymore, but, I know a bunch of people in the music industry. And he says, it's Dr. Cheryl. And I said, oh, I know Dr. Cheryl. I interviewed her on the podcast. So we had a chat the other day. So, we connected and talked, and I said, hey, I see that you're up at the, Great Lakes Naval Base and you're booking bands. Tell me about what's going on, because I know some people in the industry. And she gave me the deets. and they are having live bands on Thursday nights from 6 to 8, which what musician would not want to work from 6 to 8 and make more money than they were making in clubs in Chicago? And so immediately I said, okay, I know a couple of people, and I immediately did a connection between my musician friends and the doctor and said, hey, you guys need to talk to each other. Well, there's nothing in that for me. You know, I'm not going to get anything out of it. I certainly aren't going to do any marketing with that. But the bonus is that both of those people now say, oh my goodness, this person solved a problem for me. By connecting me with somebody, I'm going to remember them. So that's where I think the one-on-one is that if you can create, you know, harmony between two other people, I think you have an opportunity to stay top of mind, get something in return, right? But that we're not doing it for the return. We're doing it for, you know, the ability to help someone. So what's your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. The way I like to think about it is I like to think that there's two halves of a puzzle. In your case, you had somebody who needed bands, and the other side, you had the people that are bands and can stand a paying gig. And all of the people that you put together are two halves of the puzzle. And one of the things that that I talk about in my networking book and when I teach networking is that it's like you said, it's important to listen first, and not only to be polite, but the more you can get the other person to talk and tell you as much as possible about who they are, what they're doing, what their interests are, what their problems are, the better you can respond with something that's going to be meaningful to them. So I try always to let them do as much talking as possible, because besides their business things, I'll find things about them as people, especially like what kind of dogs they have and how many of them they have. And if the dog is a good wolf in the background, and will they let me see the dog on Zoom? All those important things is what I find out. And so that's but that's making a connection, because besides which, those little waggy tails do a lot. I can help it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and who knows, Layla might make an appearance during this. We'll see, because it is the garage sale weekend, so there's a bunch of strange cars around. So she's been barking all day because, you know, she's protecting her house.
Absolutely.
So how do you deal with, you go to a one-on-one, it could be on Zoom, it could be in person, you go to a one-on-one and you sit and listen to somebody, and their whole mindset is if I can convince this person to buy from me, I'm going to keep selling and selling and selling and selling. So how do you put the, you know, kibosh on that, or kind of turn the tides a little bit? What's your experience with that?
You know, those people that that do that, I feel really sad for them. I feel very sorry for them, because often they're people. Sometimes they're people who've had a coach that told them something that I don't think is particularly valid, or they're in a franchise and the franchise told them that. Mm-hmm. I met with somebody that was in a franchise, and we had a one-on-one, and they gave me a book that their founder had written. And you wrote books, you've written books, I've written books, and they're nice, but they're not this big ooh kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so after we met, they said, okay, now who can you refer me to? You must have at least 3 people that you could send me to. And I said, well, thank you. I'll keep you in mind. And he said, well, you're supposed to tell me 3 people. And I'm thinking, I feel really badly for you, because you're not going to do very well with that kind of an approach. And but I think that sometimes those people, hopefully, as they go along, they'll start to realize that their approach isn't being productive. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things that I really hope that they find out, because sometimes you just can't turn them back around the other way, at least not in the short term. But right. And so that's sort of unfortunate. And they're in this sell mode as opposed to letting you buy mode.
Right. And so one of the things that you've been helping me with is kind of honing, you know, some messaging and working on, you know, trying to come across what is networking, what's the best way to do it, and why does it work, and you know, how can we maximize this? So we talked about the inner circle, or the tribe of 150. And that, I think, is a legitimate number. I'm meaning in the concept of the 150 is it's not the 300 from Spartacus, you know, it's half of that. But the key thing is that tribes, back in, you know, the caveman days when things were going on, they had usually around 150 people. And the reason is because that was kind of the maximum that people could remember faces. And if they saw somebody that they knew, they had a different feeling than somebody who they didn't know, which could be a threat. They could be coming in to steal something, to kill something, to try to take over the entire tribe. And so, you know, that explains a lot about, you know, popularity too. It's like if you're familiar with somebody, you feel like you know them. You know, it's like influencers. And I think one of the things that's happened is people have transposed, you know, building a tribe versus trying to become an influencer and trying to get to that 30,000, right? There's a big difference between that. And I think we've been sold that. We've been sold that on social media. We've been sold that in networking, you know, and you know, even down at like Tony Robbins seminars, you know, you can succeed. All you need is to get enough people to follow you, and you will be a success and make millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What we're talking is the difference between quantity and quality. And I tell people when I'm meeting with them and I'm meeting with clients or customers, I'll tell people that you don't need 75 acquaintances. You need 5 people who buy from you and will buy from you again. Because as you said, you can have 30,000 people who know you, and if none of them buy, you've invested your time and your money and your resources for the wrong thing. Because when you're in business, if you can't sell what you have, as one of my mentors once said, you don't have a business, you have a very expensive hobby. And so our job is to make connections that are personal and strong, and that give value to the other person. So that's the business we're really in. We're out there, as you said, to solve a problem, to give those wow moments. That's what we're there for.
Right. And Justin asked a question. He said, how are you transforming a business card to know, like, and trust? So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. A business card is the beginning of know. And then comes the like part. And like is when you and the person have an emotional connection. And it might be because you both like dogs, or you both have kids that play soccer. And you've got that connection that's more than business. There's a personal connection there. And so that's one of the ways that you build like and deepen the know. And then trust comes often when you've seen the person enough and you know you're going to see them some more. And so you know you've got this confidence that if they mess up, they better not mess up, because they know they're going to see you at the next networking meeting or at the next chamber meeting. They know that you and they are in the same circle, and that if they mess up, that you're going to know and you're going to be there the same places they are. And the other way to build trust is when there's testimonials. And one of the huge things that a business owner can give another is a testimonial. Right. And we do that in our networking groups too. We say, you know, Orange Home Services, thank you so much for your HVAC help. It was awesome as usual. And that builds trust, because it's somebody that really has no incentive to say that, but is confirming that this is a company that is good to do business with.
Right. And the biggest thing about know, like, and trust and building that relationship is, you know, know is easy, right? It is simply, right. It's a start. You know somebody's name, you remember them, you remember their business card, you know, this guy's got a QR code on the back of it, so you can easily get to his website, add him to your contacts. That's know. That's simple. Okay. Just because somebody's in your contacts doesn't mean you like them or they like you. You know, are you aligned in a business sense that makes sense? You know, and the thing about like is you start to develop a mental picture. I hate to say a bias, but it is a bias. It's about who they are and what they do. And, you know, you think to yourself, can I, you know, do I like this person? Do I like what they stand for? And then the trust portion is do I trust them enough to put my business on the line to recommend them? Or do I trust them enough to use them? Or, you know, do they trust me enough to recommend me, or trust me enough to use me? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get business from somebody, but you might get a referral. But you have to get to that trust point. And the trust takes time and it takes investment, right?
Absolutely. And as you said, when you recommend somebody, people say, some of the groups, they really push giving referrals. And when you give a referral, your business is on the line. Because if that referral doesn't work out, that customer is lost to the person you referred. That customer is also almost lost, if not permanently lost, to you. And part of what we're looking at is integrity. And the question is are the people that you're referring people that you feel have integrity? And that's something that doesn't come up a lot in most business things, but it's critical. It's the core. And you need to make sure that the people are on the same value system that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because that's going to build a long-term relationship. If you have different values, whatever way they are, but if you have different values, you're not going to be able to build and sustain a long-term relationship because there's going to be too much conflict there. And so that's one of the things that's important.
Right. And because, I mean, even in this political diversive climate that we're living in, or divisive, not diversive, it is diversive, but it's divisive too. Somebody can have a completely different political view and believe in something different, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad business person. And a lot of times we tend to correlate the two. If they believe what I believe, they're good people. If they don't believe what I believe, they're not good people. But you have to also be open to the fact that there are some really good business people who don't think the way that you do. And there's some really bad business people that do think the way you do. And so you have to kind of balance all that out. And I had an example of, something that you talked about is I had a client I was working with, and I was trying to help them, kind of get through that know, like, and trust and build their business and do things. So then I recommended somebody that I networked with who I really, really liked, who was going to assist them in part of what I needed to get done. And what ended up happening is about a month and a half into it, the person who I recommended never got back, never finished what they promised, never delivered anything. And this was an example of something that, I didn't expect because I networked with this person forever. Seemed like, they had all the answers. They did all the right stuff. I liked this person, but I recommended them to somebody. And what ended up happening is that person ended up firing me because the other person never got through, got the stuff that they needed. And so that was a learning lesson that I had to go through in order to figure out, okay, I can never recommend this person again because I can't trust my business on it. And sometimes you have to take that chance and sometimes you have to learn. You don't know until you try. There's no guarantee that if you like somebody, which I absolutely loved this person, I mean, hugs and, got along great, thought the same way, everything, but they didn't deliver. And then it ended up hurting my business. So you got to kind of balance that stuff out, right?
Absolutely. And I think when you can have very different opinions from other people, I think the thing that is detrimental for people who are in business is if they have anger. There are people out there from all sides of in this case, the political spectrum, that have got different opinions, but they respect other opinions. They don't agree with them, but they respect them.
Right.
There are other people who have divisive opinions that decide that they are so angry, and they let that be known. And that is something that makes it so that you can't really refer them because you don't know, no matter where they are politically, you can't risk them going into a client, again, one of your clients, and start to show such anger because it's not professional. And that's one of the things that some people don't realize, that I respect the fact that your opinions are not the same as mine, but I cannot recommend you because of the anger.
Right. And so one of the things that I've learned to overcome that, and I've talked about this, and I actually had some pushback in one of the meetings, is what I try to do is I try to find at least a minimum of 3 sources. So say we're talking about an HVAC company, which is a great example. You mentioned one. My goal is to go in and say, if I can, here somebody says, I'm looking for somebody to fix our air conditioner because it's hot. Okay. I would say, here's option A, here's option B, here's option C. Call all 3. I know these people, I like and I trust them, but it's up to you to pick and choose the one that you want. So what happens in that case is they may get a great vibe from somebody who would not be your first choice, which is fine. That's essentially what you're doing. And they can pick and choose that person. But the thing is since you gave them 3 choices, they made the choice. Exactly. So they can't come back to you and hold you responsible saying you did this, as I did in that one case where I only had one option and I put that person in front of the client and the client said, well, you don't know what you're talking about because this person isn't fulfilling what they said. So by having at least 1 or 2 more choices than just a single choice gives you the opportunity to put the onus of that. If for example, if the one company never showed up for the appointment, you say, oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Try the other company because, they're obviously, they must be having some issues or something, but try the other company. I trust them too. So it's no longer on your shoulders. They have to kind of vet and kind of go through that food chain. So what do you think?
No, absolutely, because you're right. You don't know who's going to resonate with somebody else. You don't know who's going to be a good choice for somebody else. And that is important. And that does take you out of the position of losing a customer, losing a client, because somebody, for whatever reason, it could have been a very legitimate reason, didn't follow through. And you're right, because none of us can afford to lose a client because of something that's as avoidable as that.
Right. And ultimately, we're putting our reputation on the line when we do that. Even if we'll never work with that person, once they lose that trust, it's really hard to build it back up. It can take years. And I've had to rebuild the trust of that customer. I still have never worked with that customer, but they still respect me. But that doesn't, and it wasn't so much about the money. It was more of the respect, because if they don't respect you, they will not refer you to anybody else. So you've kind of chopped that, you chopped off that potential for what the good that you've done. So
well, the thing that you just mentioned about building a network with 150, what happens is when you've lost that one connection, you've immediately damaged the process where you take the 150, make it 1,500, make it 3,000.
Right.
Every time you lose one of those connections early on, you've lost 150th of what you were going to ideally get out as positive information about your company. So absolutely, we can't afford to have those kinds of things out there, and it's avoidable. It is avoidable.
Right. And so somebody just joined us. His name is Chris Voss, and Chris is a guy who does part of his living is reviewing stuff.
Okay.
So he's doing reviews, and think of reviews similar to people, right? If you recommend somebody, let's say he got a digital doorbell that he had to review, he has to be honest about it, because if he's getting paid to do it and he's just putting up good reviews, to basically pay for the payment that he got, he will, he may get paid, but he's going to lose credibility in the process, right? So if somebody gets a doorbell and the doorbell doesn't work, doesn't live up to its expectations, maybe there's some hype that, came with it, all of a sudden his basically credibility, which is his, the cornerstone of his business, is going to be crushed. Now people won't pay attention to his reviews on cameras and backpacks and hard drives and audio interfaces and books and all these other things. You start to diminish your own value. So, putting your reputation on the line for somebody does take some time. So the combination of networking with people, getting a one-on-one, getting to know, like, and trust those people takes time. And you have to be willing to invest in it. So back to the tribe concept that we talked about, that 150 that I mentioned is a culmination of a lot of different people. It's not just, you don't go into a CRM, or you don't go into this trying to just find 150 potential clients so you can get 3. What you're really looking for is a combination of all kinds of different things. It could be people that maybe fill a gap that you don't. I had 2 conversations yesterday, one with a guy, and one was a lunch club and one was an introduction. One was a guy who basically creates software for parking spaces, and they track the parking spaces and the time and the license plate, and they basically produce a software package that can be used in a parking lot or can be used by a city. They have some cities that use it, and so on and so forth. Will he ever use me? Probably not. Will I ever use him? No. But if somebody ever came to me and said, hey, I'm looking for somebody in that space, I may not know, like, and trust that person, but at least I can connect the two of them. I'm not sitting here saying, buy from this person, but, here's somebody you might want to talk to who has some knowledge, so there's that value. The other person I talked to was somebody who is in this space of, they do employment law for people in the 7 to 8 figure range. So you're talking somebody making $100,000 to $1 billion. Literally, that's what they get paid. That's not the size of their company. That's what they're getting paid by the company. I may not ever work with those particular people. But, there may be an opportunity where somebody comes and says, hey, I'm working for this new company and I'm looking for a unique marketing strategy. You never know when that person might, say, yeah, I know this guy. I talked to him. It was really cool. And, you might want to have a chat with him. It's the same kind of thing. That kind of reciprocal thing may happen. And if somebody I know in business that I meet is switching jobs and wants to do an exit plan or something like that, I know somebody in a very specific area of law that can help them, so, and again, you're not walking into this like you are with a heating and air conditioning, which is a consumer thing. It's very different on the consumer side than I think it is on the business side. On the business side, you can make an introduction. You're not asking them to do work. You're just making an introduction saying, here's somebody that is very unique. Where am I going to find 3 employment lawyers that work in, 7 to 8 figure businesses, right? There are not that many of them. And even if there were, I wouldn't spend all my time trying to find 3 of them because it's not within my wheelhouse. So the concept being, what is the difference between the consumer side and the B2B side? And why is your 150 network made up of all these different people? Why is that important? I know that's a big question and a big nut to crack.
I think for many of us in the B2B space, what we're often selling is information and expertise. And because of that, every last one of us is different. And the field we're in is fluid. And so when we're trying to find a match between one of us in the B2B space and a customer or client, that's where that comes in. As people that are in the services, that are in the product lines, people like HVAC, it's a very cut and dried product that they're selling. In the case of those of us that are working in the B2B space, we're selling something that's very unique. And because of that, that's something that that changes the dynamic. It changes how we approach things. It changes how we sell. It changes how we build know, like, and trust. Because people do have to get to the point where they're comfortable with who we are as people. And so that's one of the very big differences. We're not a commodity.
Right.
And so that's the biggest difference that I see, is that we're not a commodity. We're very unique. And I work with a small business development center, and at the SBDC, the other day I turned a client over to my boss because she had more expertise in that area than I did. I'm not there saying that I'm the best fit for everybody. I know when I'm not the best fit, as you do, for what you do. And we find our goal is to get the best fit for the person that approaches us. And if it's not us, we want that person to be satisfied with the person that's the best fit.
Right. I can give 2 real world examples of that. And the first one is I was meeting with I have a client that basically said, Brian did this and he's great at it and that kind of stuff. So they recommended me to somebody and somebody said, I want what they have. And so I had a meeting with them and they kept going down the road of, now what I do is fairly complex. It involves, I've got 15 people working for me at any given time. So there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot to it. It's not as simple as, snap your fingers, hit the easy button and you're done. So they came to me and said, you know what, I see this one website and it ranks better on Google than I do. So I want to mimic that website, because every website company I've worked with has never lived up to its promises. And, the reason they probably haven't is because they made promises they couldn't deliver on or really didn't know or understand the business. So, when we went through things and I explained, this is what I do, this is how I do it, these are the moving parts, this is, you need a combination of things. It's not like, if you just put oil in your car, it will run. No, you need oil, you need transmission fluid, you need windshield wiper fluid. There's bunches of different fluids to make your car run. It's the same kind of thing. And they kept pounding. It's like, no, all I want to do is make this website like this website and get us ranking #1 on Google over them. And, finally I said to him, I said, hey, I am not a good fit for your business. I can't do this, but there are some web developers that I know, like, and trust that will listen to you and give you what you want. I'm recommending that you need more, but if that's what you want, I will at least point you in the direction of a handful of developers. I've got a few, and they will help you get to where you want to be. If that is your goal, I can help you achieve it, but my business is not going to be a good fit. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we're not the best fit for people that are like that.
Right.
And if we take the engagement, they're going to be disappointed. Because I mean, being number one on Google, as I remind people when I teach the class on starting a business for the SBDC, it's easy to be number one on Google. All you have to do is to ask for the right question. And so I point out, for example, that if somebody asks for Ellen Huxtable Advantage Business Concepts, Batavia, Illinois, I'll be number one on Google.
Right.
And so it's not hard to be number one on Google, but it's the question is again, what is the payoff? It's not only that you're going to be on page one or number one, it's going to be, are they going to click on you? And then are they going to be people that are going to be serious about buying what you have to offer? Because you can put in language there to be number one on Google for something that's a little bit more general than your name, your company, and your city. But if you're just doing it to get the clicks, you're not going to necessarily get the purchases.
Right.
And the clicks are not what counts. It's the purchases that count.
Right. And if somebody even clicks on your website and they get there, what we find is all the tricks of the trade will drive traffic to your website. That's not a problem. But the problem is they don't spend any time there. They'll spend 10 seconds or less. They'll get there, they'll look at it and say, not interested, and it's not that the beauty of the website is going to make it. It's the message behind the website. And immediately they're saying, is this for me? Now, the thing is, most companies try to say, well, it's for everybody who's got a heartbeat, a wallet, and is breathing. If we can make this universal enough, we will capture more of the market. And in reality, what you're trying to do is get it so niched out that when somebody shows up and says, oh my God, they're speaking to me. That's the hard part, is
Right.
understanding the niches and the places. And unfortunately, a homepage generally can't do that, because in that 10 seconds, they've made the decision. So what you need to do is, if you've got somebody who wants a llama, you have to drive them to the llama page. And you have to say, here's how to care for your llama. And by the way, we sell llama accessories. If somebody has sheep, you got to get them to the sheep page and say, here's how you care for sheep, and here are sheep accessories. And if somebody has a dog, you get them to the dog page. But you've got to get them to the page that they're interested in, and get them to engage deeper, because now they say, oh, they understand llamas. Now I want to learn more from this company. Maybe I should sign up for their email list. Maybe I should come to their webinar. Maybe I should do something else. They really understand. They're unique in the fact that they're not a pet food store that sells to dogs, cats, squirrels, guinea pigs and llamas. It's the llama store. They get me.
Well, the thing is that by niching that way, you're going to spend your time as a business getting deeply involved in that niche. So if you're a llama store, you're going to know, just because of your business, more about llamas than anybody else. And that's what's going to be appealing. That's what's going to be appealing to somebody who's looking for a llama, because they're going to see the one site that has 25 different kinds of animals, and they're going to say, oh, this person knows animals. Then they're going to see the site that's no, llamas are us. And they're going to say, wow, these people spend 100% of their time working with and understanding llamas.
Right.
And so because of that, you've got credibility, that because you're niched, people are going to assume, and hopefully rightly so, that you're the best. And that's what you have to do. There's a differentiator. Right. The question that we always ask is, why should somebody buy from you and not the competition? And one of the ways that you can build that differentiation is by being the best, and the way you can be the best is by being niched.
And the other thing that, again, that we have to think about is the difference between the B2C world and the B2B world. And I use, in my book, Toilet Paper Math, I use the analogy of, if I buy the wrong toilet paper in the consumer world, I sleep on the couch because my wife is angry. My dog might get angry too, who knows? But if I buy the wrong toilet paper in the B2B world, I sleep on the street because I lose my job, because usually you're buying in bulk and it's going to all these places and they're saying you didn't buy toilet paper, you bought sandpaper and it's the wrong stuff and you're fired. So, the thing that means is that people are much slower in the B2B world to make decisions. And so the investment in networking, the investment in one-on-ones, the investment in the relationship is going to take a lot longer to tilt the scales in your direction, right?
Absolutely. It's because, like you said, the risks are higher.
Mm-hmm.
The risks for the toilet paper on the B2C world is, you're right. You've got a roll of toilet paper that your wife hates and that the dog loves, because the dog can chew it up just like they chews up all of the toys. Your
Exactly.
dog will be very happy, your wife not so much. But you're right. In a company, in a business, it's your job. And because of that, people are very hesitant. They're very hesitant to make a change. They're very hesitant to work with a company that's not the number one company that everybody's worked with in the field for the last 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that one company that's been in the field for 45 years messes up, people will figure, oh, wow, they're at the top of the game, and that must just be the way this field works. If they go with you and you're a newer business or a smaller business and things don't go the way they turned out, the person that hired you is going to be on the street, because the question asked by the top bosses is going to be, why did you hire them? Didn't you know that XYZ is a leader in the field? What made you think that this small company or this new company was going to be better than them? That was a really bad choice, and your career is over. So people are extremely hesitant to make a change. And there's many different people you have to sell to. When you're selling B2B, there's three different people you have to sell to. There's the end user. If you're selling copying machines, that's the admin who's got to make 10,000 copies, and he or she wants a machine that's not going to jam.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be the boss, and the boss wants to have a machine that when he or she brings in somebody from another department, they're going to say, ooh, wow, do you have a nice machine? I don't have one that's nice. And then you have the finance people who are going to pay the bill. And they want to see exactly what the terms are of the lease, and they want to see how much it's going to cost and how much the cost is going to be per copy. And so when you're selling B2B, you're going to have three different customers, and the way you sell to each of them is totally different,
Right.
because they have different needs. And so that's part of the fun of being in B2B.
Exactly. Yes. It's a much longer process. It's much more complicated, but can you believe that we only have 8 minutes left? That's how fast this goes.
I know. I mean, not that you and I are exactly shy.
No, not at all. And Justin said, great session. Thanks, Ellen and Brian. And he had to leave. But, if you have any questions, you can ask us. We got a few minutes left. But I think, to kind of summarize all of this, the first and foremost, when it comes to networking, the reason that you want to get out there is to learn from other people what they do. And again, one of the things that the pandemic taught me was Lunch Club. I've never played with Lunch Club before. So now I'm meeting people that are just amazing that I would never have the opportunity to speak with. And it just randomly selects these people. As a matter of fact, you met a few people on Lunch Club that I was able to have joined your mastermind. And on top of that, I was able to interview on the podcast. So talk about that.
Absolutely. And that's where the connections come in handy. I mean, again, the people that I met on Lunch Club, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is a fascinating person. They've got something to offer. There's something new there. There's something different. And I know that Brian has, of course, multiple different channels, and I'll connect the two of them. And if it turns out, fine. If it doesn't turn out, that's okay too. But again, it's the two halves of the puzzle. And the fun part about Lunch Club is that several times I've ended up talking to people that are in Europe. I talked to somebody that was Scottish and talking to me from Ireland, and had a business that's both in the EU as well as in the United States. But you meet some fascinating people doing things like that. And it's a great way to broaden the scope and the assumptions that people have. And it's a great way to broaden your knowledge and question your baseline assumptions. There are people from Canada who, for example, on healthcare say, that we don't understand why your healthcare is the way it is, because ours works fine. But that's just one example of what you find out from other people when you actually get to talk to them one-to-one as people.
Right. And it expands your horizon, but it also can create a stable. And here's one of the tips that I want to leave with is all of this has a purpose. And the key thing that I do, and I suggest and I teach in my courses and things, is you want to, generally speaking, a person will have a network of around somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000 people. Your inner core is that 150. Those are the 150 people that you want to pay attention to every single month, is what I suggest. And if you connected with 10 people a day and you sent them an email, a text, smoke signals, it doesn't matter. But if you just connected with them and said, hey, how you doing? How can I help you? Or what's up? There's different ways of saying it depending on who you're connecting with. You don't want to just have this generic automated AI bot going out and saying, hi, this is Brian. It was time for me to connect with you because my calendar said so. So what are you doing and how are you? I get those all the time. You get these bots connecting saying, it was time for me to reach out and I want to know, how are you doing? It's like, you don't really care how I'm doing. It's a bot. So the key thing is that you want to have that core of 150 people out of that network of 2,000 that you can bring in. And if you meet somebody new, you add them in. And if somebody's not being responsive in that 150, you pull them out. But you keep that relative circle tight. The way to make that work, though, is you've got to take notes. You've got to have them in CRM. You've got to have them in something that reminds you, these are the people I want to talk to. Now, your CRM can be a pad of paper. Your CRM can be a spreadsheet. Your CRM can be anything, but it's that customer relationship management of tracking who's in and who's out of that inner circle. And your real inner circle is where you get down to the mastermind size, which is, who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? That's your brain trust. Your brain trust is different than the sphere of the 150, who are either going to be people you can recommend or people who might recommend you, or actually customers, or past customers or vendors. It's a mix of all of those things. But these are people you want to stay in touch with. You may never do business with them, but they may be a great referral source. Then when you get to that 1,500, that's the big sphere. That's the one that you want to be able to go, oh, I met this guy who's in Canada, who works in the travel industry through Lunch Club. I forget his name. Well, you should be able to go into something and type it in and say, Canada, see everybody in Canada, travel. And then all of a sudden it gets it down to that one person, say, ooh, that's a person I need to recommend to this. Or, here's somebody that I think would be a good fit for this partner, so that outer scale of network are the people that you network in face to face, get their business card in there. Don't necessarily add them to the 150 that you're communicating on a regular basis, but make sure you have that data somewhere where it's accessible, because we only have the mindset to remember 150 people on a regular basis, right?
And again, you're maximizing the impact you have, because to really care about those people is going to have much more impact than having 1,000 people that you send out the generic message to, because you can't send out a personalized message to 5,000 people or 3,000 people.
Right.
And the people that are in your inner circle are people that you like. They've got to be people you like. They've got to be people that you like to communicate with and that they like to hear from you.
Right.
And so that's where the know, like, and trust comes in, because these are people not just that these are people that really like you. And so then it's not a drudgery. Then it's fun. I mean, then it's gee, these are my friends. These are my business friends, and I want to connect with them. So that's the part that makes this. It's another reward for doing networking the right way.
Absolutely. So in honor of what you just said, if people want to connect with you, they can go to advantagebiz.com. So tell them about your business and kind of what you do and what's the purpose behind it.
Sure. I like to work with business owners or business leaders who are not satisfied with the way things are. Because some people are satisfied, and that's fine, but they're not somebody that I can work with and help. But I like to work with people who are not satisfied with the way things are and are looking for options that are creative and options that are out of the box, even though out of the box is an in the box phrase. But I tend to be able to see opportunities for people that they can't see for themselves, either directly or through some of the mastermind groups. There's always those aha moments. And I know that I can't see them for myself, but I can often see them for other people. And that's what makes me very satisfied with the work that I do. So whether it's the mastermind groups or presentations or workshops or one-on-ones, that's where I find the synergies between myself and my customers.
And you not only have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, you've worked in a lot of different fields from small to large. And that's the biggest thing is, one of the things I recommend to everybody, if you haven't joined one of Ellen's mastermind groups, definitely contact her and ask. and try it out, just see if it makes sense for you. Because I give one last story before we finish. And it was in your mastermind group that we sat down, and somebody who is in our larger network paid me to do some work. And then halfway through, they stopped paying me. And they said, I'm not going to pay you. I could do this myself. And I said, okay, but you still hired me. I did all the work. I understand you could do it yourself, but now it's not the time because we did all the work. And they said, no, I'm not going to pay you. So then I went and I tried to find a collection firm, and I thought about suing them and all this other stuff. And I remember sitting in your meeting, and basically you asked the question, well, how much do you make an hour? At the time, it was $100 an hour. How many hours are you willing to invest to get your $500 back? And, all of a sudden you did the math, and it's like, wait, if I spend 5 hours and I got to pay somebody else, I've lost money. If I spend 2 hours, that's not enough time to actually get to the point where I can get them educated to what I need. And you basically said, you're better off go find another customer for $500 and write it off. And I went, okay, made sense. And basically saved me a lot of grief and a lot of headaches.
Absolutely. But that's the thing, that when we are in our business inside looking out, we don't see it. And none of us, I don't. But from the outside looking in, that's where the synergies come. That's where the aha moments come.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So anyways, connect with Ellen. Go to advantage-biz.com and connect with her on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for stepping in. We had somebody who had an issue that they could not make it this morning. So I really appreciate you and your time and coming and joining us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I always like having a chat with you, Brian.
I love it too. It's always a joy. So thank you so much. And we're going to send us off with a little bacon and coffee theme song. Have a good one, everybody. See you next week.